Hi, Emilian. I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. Welcome to Nina's Notes. I want to talk a bit about your past. I mean, we met through the Voyagers Network, 2 or 3 years ago now. And I think the whole time I've known you, you've always really been into longevity. Prior to that, I know that you started your career in venture capital, and then you're a serial entrepreneur with several successful businesses. So tell me about that journey and what made you really want to switch from the investing side to the build side.
No, absolutely. Look, I think I've been an entrepreneur since my early days. When I was a kid, I was born in Romania. So when I was a kid, I was going to cross the border to Bulgaria, then selling stuff, and then buying other stuff, and then I was selling, I don't know, selling shoes, and I was buying some perfume of like rose perfume, selling back into Romania. This was in the 80s. So I think I had this entrepreneurial in my early university. And yeah, I had this stint in venture capital, which was amazing because for 4 years, it allowed me to look at, hundreds and hundreds of companies. I think I've dealed more than 200 or 300 companies. I spoke to more than 1,000 different ventures across multiple markets, and it allowed me to really understand what works, what doesn't work. But behind the scenes, I'm an operator. I've been operating companies, launched a number of models in different geographies, very, very focused on emerging markets. I'm very focused on democratizing access to different products and services. So I went back into entrepreneurship after my venture capital stint. And it happened to get into healthcare. I'm not a doctor, so for a long time I had this imposter syndrome because I've been dealing with clinicians, and actually been telling to myself very often, I'm happy I'm not a doctor because I can look at the medical field and operating medical company from a different angle and be maybe less conservative and be open to bring solutions into a field which has been hasn't moved at the same speed as other fields and remains very, very conservative. I got into medical, built a first medical company in East Africa because I happened to spend more than half of my time in Kenya. A very operational model, a platform, building or refurbishing small primary care clinics, bringing more equipment, training clinicians, building or implementing a technology platform to run these clinics, so more like a consolidation model, which eventually ended up having about 500,000 patients across almost 700 small clinics, which allowed me to get deeper and understand the flaws in the medical space. But this wasn't enough for me because so long story short, but I had my own medical or my own health issues in the past. And they're not over. I think, like many of us, I've got this founder syndrome, or working too hard, traveling way too much, not taking care of myself, while thinking I was doing a lot of things for my own health. But the reality is that sometimes I was even hurting my body and bringing more inflammation than doing well. Than doing good. And this compounded with my experience in building this network of primary care clinics got me into a deep interest into helping people live healthier and longer. Plus, family members, my mom, even family members passed away because of things which, could have been prevented. Have friends. I'm in my early 50s. I started to have friends who, are either very, very sick or even died, which is very, very unfortunate. So a number of things got me into this interest in kind of late kind of 2018, 2019, early 2000 into what we call longevity. But I try not to call this longevity because I strongly believe that what we do, myself and entrepreneurs and in the field, we rather help people live healthier than live longer. Obviously, living healthier eventually helps people living longer, but it's much more about health span than lifespan. And it's very much about preventative care, about the basics. So this was the beginning of what my kind of thinking and my mind is, which is expanding someone health state. Though therefore Healthspan Health, which is the brand which I built since 2020, 2022, which eventually which started with physical infrastructure, so clinics, continued with a technology platform, with building protocols, and today is a mix of physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, but with the same goal that we kept from day one, which is help people live healthier and eventually longer.
I like how you said you want people to expand their mind, and then I was like, good play, Emilian, because I know your company is called Expand Health, so I think that was very clever. Well said. So I've had the privilege to go visit your physical site in Cape Town, which is absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. So if I have any listener subscribers that are in Cape Town, they should definitely stop by. And so what have you found with interacting kind of like in that patient experience, like hands-on, that you can actually scale into other clinics or into people's homes, something that they can bring home themselves that you see is very, very successful?
Look, I think if you think of physical infrastructure, the limitations are the number of people like you who come and visit that or see the clinicians and can be treated, right? So we talk about 300-400 patients, unique patients that come into one of our clinics, and we have the clinic in Cape Town, we have another clinic in Bucharest that we launched just over a year ago, and there are a few other satellite clinics or partnerships in Miami. Now we start other clinics or wellness infrastructure in hospitality in Europe and Asia. But the limitations of physical infrastructure is exactly how many people can you get into a clinic, right? Very different than a digital model. One thing that I've learned by interacting with patients is that we're still in the world where people like us want to talk to someone. Yes, you have AI. Yes, maybe in 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to wake up in the morning and, there will be an AI telling us, your heart rate variability maybe is a bit low today or was low last night. Your heart rate was maybe a bit higher, whatever. Therefore, don't worry. But if this continues, then something, may need to be checked. And maybe the primary care and the secondary care practices will maybe disappear. Who knows? And then the care infrastructure will be actually physical, surgeries, etc. I don't know. And it may happen. But today we're still in the world where people need compassion. People need to talk to someone, to talk to a medical professional or a health coach who can give them advice based on something which is medically proven, scientifically proven. And I think that's a limitation, but also an advantage because we want into operating physical spaces. I think the scalable part of this is eventually our clinicians will be able to consult remotely. And they still do in the jurisdictions where the clinics are. The challenge is the doctor in Cape Town cannot consult a patient in London, or a doctor in Bucharest cannot consult a patient in the US because of the regulations and the licenses and the medical insurance. So that's where we've been now looking into how can we treat more patients by potentially opening spokes, more like a hub and spoke model where the clinics become the hubs where people come and do they have the consultation, the labs, the tests, etc. But there are treatment spaces in secondary cities or in other places where once the patient or the client has the first interaction with a clinician and gets the program, the protocol, they can do the treatments in another place. And this goes towards like what we think, what's the client interaction and journey, which is kind of similar to what we see in the conventional space, but different at the same time. So, right, if you go and see your primary care doctor, what happens? I mean, why do you go and see your primary care doctor? Because something is wrong, right? You have a flu. What do you? You're going to call the doctor, you're going to go and see the doctor, you have a consultation, the outcome of this, maybe a couple of questions, maybe one test, one laboratory test, very basic. And the outcome is a prescription. You take the prescription, go to the pharmacy, take your meds, go home. You're not going to see the doctor anymore. Maybe in another time where you're sick, right? Now, in the functional or preventative functional care, similar flow, but much deeper. Before the consultation, you have a very deep form, questionnaire that you fill in, so that the clinician knows exactly what's happening, your past. There may be things that happen in your childhood that you don't even remember, but if there are questions like guiding questions, you're going to fill them in, which may impact your current state of health. Then there is a consultation. It's not anymore that 15 minutes primary care consultation. It's a much longer. It's a deep dive into someone's health. And consultation can be anywhere between 45 minutes and 2 hours. Then there's diagnostics, way more than just a blood test. There may be blood tests, There may be other things that the clinician, once she or he sees your initial diagnosis, may recommend, because blood tells you a limited part of the story. Blood doesn't show what's inside your cells. So all the cellular inflammation is not picked up in the blood test. Very difficult to see maybe heavy metals, maybe other things, mycotoxins in blood. So more tests, deeper diagnostics, and then the outcome of this is not a prescription, it's not a pill, a list of things, it's actually a program. We call it an engagement plan, which is, think of a calendar, which can be, 1 or 2 or 3 months with lifestyle changes, treatments in the clinic, supplementation, etc. With more checks during that protocol. I often say what is not measured, very difficult to change, right? Because first of all, we all want the pill, that pill. And unfortunately, that pill doesn't exist yet. Maybe one day we'll have a pill which will rejuvenate and, eliminate all the cellular senescence, but we don't have the pill yet. And unfortunately, to get better, you need to invest time and efforts. And people don't like that, right? I mean, who wants to spend 4 hours a day doing a bunch of things and instead of having fun, right? So change, mindset change and behavior change is something that it's something that we spend a lot of time, and we're number one showing clients and patients that it works by showing them before and during and after, but to continue doing what I do. And this human interaction with the clinician is very important, because the clinician is a sounding board, right? Tells you, you've done this, it's not enough, you need to keep doing that, it's going to work, and look at the results.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. The behavior change aspect is so hard. Everyone's looking for that silver bullet because they want to keep living that, like you just said, this founder lifestyle of like, let me grind, crash, repeat basically every single day. But I want to take these supplements so that I can continue to do that, but be fine and live long and live healthy. I see that as a trend, kind of in like the biohacker space. It's everyone's still kind of looking for this, or they want to go super extreme. Tell me about what you do on the daily that you can get that compounding effect of those positive behavior change, so that's been increasing your health span.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, what I do, it may or may not work. I don't know. I mean, I just did I did another glycanage test a couple of weeks ago, and the result came today, and I had a call with a clinician, and I know very well. I know the founder, and we talked a lot about this. And I'm actually 20 years older than my chronological age, which is crazy, right? Despite the fact that
really,
I think
how did it change from the first one?
Didn't actually. It was the same. Okay. I mean, some of the markers are better, but it's still there's still cellular inflammation. There's low grade inflammation in my body. I have no idea where does it come from. I mean, I can infer that I travel a lot. I think I did 50 flights this past year, most of them between Europe and the US, or Africa and the US, or long flights with a lot of circadian disruption. So what I do, look, everything, I start with the basics, and I don't really want to call this biohacking, because finally we always go back to nutrition, sleep, mindfulness, activity, right? So we need to move. I mean, we need to eat healthy and eat healthy, this inflammatory diet, kind of like the hunter-gatherers diet. Not eat, try to live at least 16 hours in between meals, right? So we talk about intermittent fasting, but I don't even call it fasting. It's, early dinner, late breakfast. And I love my breakfast. I still have a breakfast, but maybe it's at 11 or 12. So leave enough space for the body to heal. Sometimes I do 24 hours or even a 72 hours fast every few months. Eat all the colorful veggies and so this anti-inflammatory diet. Move continuously. I don't sit. I never sit. I move. I stand and I move. I do push-ups in between calls. I run up the stairs. I take stairs in the airports. I try to use any opportunity to move, because sometimes I don't have time to go to the gym, right? So then I move. And then sleep, which I didn't sleep enough in the past year. I think this is that because I have some sleep debt there. I've been sleeping more, and it's not even about the length of the sleep; it's about the quality. So how do I make sure that my deep sleep, which starts in the beginning of the night, is good, is long enough, is at least 20% of my sleep? How do I make sure that I have enough REM in the morning? So this goes to what do I do in the couple of hours before I go to bed. So I try not to watch screens, though it's difficult. I may wear blue light blockers. I meditate. I restarted meditation about 2 months ago. I'm actually using a friend of mine, who's the founder of a company called Sensei, offered me a headset, so I've been using it. It's more like a neurofeedback meditation device.
Okay.
Helped me a
Yeah.
lot.
How does that work? So it's an EEG headband?
It's it with electrodes. So it's a neurofeedback device, kind of EEG type plus laser, and there's a neurofeedback, but there's also the music which puts you in a state, puts me in a state of meditation. So I do that in the evening, then in the morning, different. So it forces me to meditate. Same like doctors, right? We know that something is good for us, but we don't do it because we always it's not enough time in the day. So. But this helped me to find that 25 minutes in the evening and 25 minutes in the morning, and force me to make this a routine. And I'm just using the device. My brain is like a monkey brain. I can't meditate otherwise. It's thinking all the time. So these things put me in that, force me to meditate. So kind of meditations, meditation checked. And then it's there's community. So we talk about nutrition, movement, mindfulness, sleep. And then there is a community which is very important. So luckily I have the chance to have an amazing family and a lot of support at home. And finally, it's about replicating look at the blue light zone, the people living in, the south of Italy and, I don't know, Baja California and then in Okinawa. It's like they don't go to gym. They have maybe a glass of wine, but the compounding, they move continuously. They have community. There's stress. I mean, we live in a massive stressful world. And so in my case, yeah, that's the basics. And then yes, I have a bunch of devices. I try, obviously. I look at what can solve the thing which I think affects most of us, which is stress and inflammation. And mostly low-grade inflammation. I'm not talking about the inflammation that comes because of an external source. I'm talking about a low-grade, long-term inflammation, because everything flying around us, which is chemicals, microplastics, EMFs, all the stress from flies, from the day-to-day life. So how do I actually try to become more resilient? And I do a lot of hyperbaric sessions. So hyperbaric, I think, is one of the best modalities, because it helps healing your tissues from inside out, because of the oxygen and the pressure. Red lights, which I have a big panel behind, and I keep it behind my back when I work, and for 15 minutes, and then I do calls for another 15 minutes with a red light in front of me. I have a cold plunge at home. I do it a couple of times a week. I have a sauna. I mean, nothing fancy, just a Finnish sauna. And yeah, I'm now on a peptide protocol because of this low-grade inflammation. So I'm trying BPC 157 and Cerebro and TA1 and TB400. So a few things which are more medical. And let's see. I mean, I want to measure and see if they work. Do not like an age in 6 months from now. But it's very interesting, right? Because talking about how do you measure? I mean, if one does just blood tests, I mean, my there's nothing in my blood test which will say that I have any problem, right? Even a epigenetic, like a true age, looks great. But there's something there, and unless you do it, you don't know. And then you get hit by something, by a problem, 10 years later, and you didn't see it coming. And then obviously for me, it's more about, can I change my lifestyle completely? I can't. I still need to fly. I have clinics here and there. I have, it's very difficult to stop. So my strategy is rather different. I'm trying actually to build resilience. Am I achieving this? Debatable. I feel great. It's interesting, right? Because I feel super energetic, but there's something in my biomarkers which show that there is a problem, and I haven't figured out that problem. But I'm still working on building resilience.
I think mindset is honestly a big component of it, because
Yeah.
I think when you reference, the blue zones and the people that are there, they have low stress, they have a good attitude, and they're having fun, they're enjoying life. And I think bringing that together, mindfulness, enjoying life, you're going to expand that joy span. Actually, I'm writing an article for Nina's Notes all about joy span and how you need to enjoy those extra years that you're living as well. It's not just about increasing health span, but actually wanting to spend that time. And I think a big component of that is resilience. It's just adjusting to the different things that come your way. I'm curious about, you mentioned the glycan age test, but I know that you recently launched a partnership with Humanity. I love Michael Gear. He's been on the podcast twice. He was my first podcast guest ever. We also know each other through obviously the same Voyagers community. When did you incorporate that into Expand, and how has that changed the client experience?
So I've been a very active user myself of humanity since I met Mike and Peace, I don't know, back in 2019. Then what we do, so we have a pilot with Expand where we embed humanity in our software to be able to give patients a simple score. Because indeed, a challenge is that how many people can pay, whatever, 350 pounds or more, 375 pounds, like an age, or a $500 to age, which goes to the US and comes back 3 months later. It's very difficult. I mean, it's very few people. I mean, few people can afford, and it's complicated. So, is there a way where one can come up with a score number using a limited number of biomarkers? And that's really what I love in what Pete and Mike have been preaching is, using massive data sets and correlations, using a small number of biomarkers, so a few blood tests, Apple Watch data, or your HRV, or your movement, to be able to come up with a score. Finally, in my opinion, it's not even about the score. The score is just a number, but the number tells you, whether or not today you're okay. The number can change from one day to the other, right? But it tells you whether or not you're on the right track, and then obviously over time it measures the trend. It's more about the trend than anything else. People like this because it's a very quick result, which is accurate, and it's interesting the accuracy of it when you look into, you try to compare it to it with similar ways of inferring the biological age. And glycogen is a very different thing, and I think the fact that they correlate with an age may or may not be good. So the question is there low-grade inflammation or not? And then does it mean that I'm 20, I'm 70, whatever, 75? I don't know. But there's a problem. But I think the age is also misleading because some people may take it, badly because it's like, what's happening? I'm doing everything possible and I'm still not okay, or the other way around. But I think, the correlations with, using basic biomarkers to come up with a very quick and actually low cost way to measure aging is amazing, and may not need to be that sophisticated. So it works. I mean, it has worked for me, it works for our clients, and I'm a massive fan of what Pete and Mike have been doing.
Yeah, me too. I do think just getting that age number presented to you, you immediately know what it means, and it can shock you. Like, getting your glycan age number back 20 years older, you definitely pause and think, okay, what do I need to change? And I think that can drive that behavior change that we find is so hard to actually do. And thinking about preventative care, a lot of this behavior change, it is in fact very, very preventative. What's something you've learned as you've scaled your companies across, I think you've worked in 4 different continents, your first company, Alara Health, 500,000 people you reached across Africa. What did you find worked in terms of scaling on the preventative side?
So look, I think prevention comes with a certain ability to think and pay. The challenge is that in some markets at a certain levels of income, people think of survival first.
Of course.
Not of prevention or health. They need to eat, they need to have enough money to pay rent and bring the bread for their kids, etc. When I look at, specifically most of Africa, maybe with a couple of exceptions, and I'm sure there are other geographies which are similar, we talk about very basic and non-sophisticated healthcare. So very focused on on diseases, microbial diseases. It's not about prevention. It's not about, people will eat whatever they have. They don't think of nutrition. Don't think of moving. They need to move. They move because they don't have money to pay a car. So I see an interesting trend where the kind of mid-income individuals are actually sicker than the low income because they have access to processed food and they have access to to their own transportation. So they're not forced to move. They're not forced to fast. They're not forced to, so it remains very basic. Just to give an example, Kenyan pays $75 per year in the whole healthcare ecosystem. You can't even do a blood test. Wow. You cannot do much, right? An American pays, 15 to 20,000. A European, anywhere between 3 and 10,000 euros. I think so. Capacity to pay makes or breaks the model. Now there is also affordability. So again, going back to humanity, right? I like it because it's an extremely affordable way to offer something, a score, which otherwise would be complex to and expensive to do. And I believe that with the rise of AI, healthcare will become more affordable. You may not need to consult a doctor all the time. You may not need to pay for, there's a lot of beneficial ways to use artificial intelligence to lower the cost. So lowering the cost of healthcare is super important. But what I see also is we see a trend in our clinics, which is moving from the super high level in the high income individuals who want to do a lot of tests and they can pay, towards mid income, many in Cape Town, where people start to understand think prevention, because there's a lot of people talking online about this, and some of these maybe noise, some of we criticize people because they or influencers because they come with they may talk about millions of dollars spent, but I'm not saying that everything is good, but I think the fact that overall globally there's a movement towards preventative care in the past years, much more than used to be, I think is beneficial. And okay, you need to kind of separate the noise from the reality. But I still remember, right, when I was in my mid-20s, early 30s, I was working in management consulting until midnight, and then not eating properly. And we're not talking about this at the time. We're just talking about work, work, work. Today it's moved into, okay, work less, produce maybe more, but doesn't matter. Like, spend time with family and have a good quality of life. And I see this more and more coming. And I think this is a result of the way the society is evolving. And I think with AI, we're going to have more access to a lot of things. We may need to work less, and people will take care more about themselves. The challenge is yes, it becomes more affordable, and hopefully, because I still see super, super expensive longevity services in longevity clinics, which I don't think very few people can afford. But I think over time there will be a way to lower the cost, and to bring solutions which are less sophisticated. Again, not everyone can afford or want to do 10, 15 different sets of tests to have a whole view of their own body. And I think we don't know where the kind of I mean, there are a lot of different camps here. I was in London a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and they're like actually Mike from Humanity was running one of the sessions. And there was these discussions around diagnostics, around, do you need to do a lot of tests? Do you need to do no tests? Or is somewhere in the middle, right? And they're like, there's a provoked discussion between kind of two camps. One camp was like, you need to measure a lot of things, and another camp we don't need because NHS shouldn't pay for this because I don't know. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think we need to measure, because if you don't measure anything, then you don't find problems. And the question is how much, where does it stop? And that's why I think, in the kind of the conventional healthcare ecosystem, there's a lot of beliefs that you don't need to test too much because it's very costly. It becomes costly for the society now. Yes, it may be cheaper in the long term, but it's very costly now. So yes, for me, for example, doing this glycogen test was amazing because I found things that I couldn't find otherwise. I'm very fortunate that I have access to these tests through my own clinics. That's the fact that I know about these tests, but most of the people don't.
Yeah, I really liked your point about that. Basically, the middle class is getting hit the hardest. I think obviously you kind of used Africa as the example, but I do see that also translating into America. I see the same thing, but I think at least in America, the poverty does have access to a lot of these processed foods, and they are kind of equally unhealthy. I think in Africa you have kind of a different situation, like you said, they're walking places. So what sort of fraction, like what cost can create that scalability within that middle class, you think? Like, what can you take from your lessons in Africa where you brought your solutions down to fit that $75 per year healthcare spend? How can we bring that into the European market or the US market? What do you think AI can bring that cost down to?
Look, I mean, one example would be, look, I think the ecosystems and the interests are so complex today. Healthcare doesn't need to be that expensive. Can it be, $100 a year? No. Does it need to be $20,000 a year? No. So But I think because of the way the systems have been built with insurances, co-payers, with pharma companies, it's very complex to change. I was actually listening to I think Mark Hyman, one of the Mark Hyman's podcasts a year ago. Mark Hyman was saying, well, you know what, all this infrastructure, longevity as clinics is actually we're building a system, a parallel system. Whether or not this system will merge with a main healthcare ecosystem to be seen. But we're building a system which can function, at least for now, independently. And, the thought there was that the main system will need to change one day, but this ecosystem, which is very fragmented for now, doesn't need absolutely for the main system to change, right? So you can operate individually. Now, then we go to does an IV vitamin IV need to cost whatever $250? No, I mean the cost behind is $25, $50, whatever. And so, but also, my dream is democratizing access to this, but unfortunately, you cannot still be super cheap because the cost of providing these services, you need proper clinicians, you need infrastructure, you need quality products behind. So it's not going to be still not for everyone, and I don't think it's going to be for everyone anytime soon. But there are pieces of it which can be delivered in a very affordable way. And I think we go back to the example of do you need a very complex biological aging test? You may not need. You can actually live with something which is very affordable. Which can work for most of the people. Do you want to pay to get much deeper? Then you pay. So I think there's still a way to actually tap into these kind of two type of population: people who want to pay and can pay, and people who don't have that much money. I really think that the biggest challenge is still going back to behavior change and going back to people understanding and recognizing that prevention is needed and takes effort, and there is no simple pill. And that's very challenging. That's very challenging because it's not just about the money; it's about the time people. When you have a family and you have a job, and how many hours a day can you spend in front of a red light panel or in front of or meditating? Yeah, you can't, right? When you have kids, when you have problems. So how do you change this mindset? And that's complicated. That's complicated. Yeah. How do you make these things part of your daily routines?
And honestly, that is the $1 trillion question, because the person that can scale behavior change in a way that's not Instagram, because that was scalable behavior change for sure, because now we're all stuck to our screens. That's going to be the game changer for sure. And I think fundamentally that has to come down to breaking a lot of the systems that are in place. And you mentioned that people are waking up to saying, hey, I don't want to work as long. I don't want to grind as crazy. But I'm also seeing a trend right now, especially out of Silicon Valley and all these AI companies, that there was a relaxed period where it's like, you can work from home post-COVID. We trust that you're getting your work done on your own time. And now it's like back to the office. Actually, we're going back to the office 6 days a week. And because we have to compete with all these other AI companies. So I think we're going to see a second wave of that toxic VC-backed work style, which unfortunately then influences a lot of the rest of the world as well. Silicon Valley always seems to trickle out into the rest of the world. I would like to see what you said, where we kind of bring that European mindset back, where we're like, no, actually slowing down, being happy. We don't have to take over the world. I don't know. So these two things are very at odds, And so how do we break that system? And will it happen with, I guess, everyone just getting sick along the way?
Well, that's a good question. I'll give you an example. I attended a Mind Valley University in Amsterdam, was like 6 months ago. Vishen Lakiani, the founder of Mind Valley, made a bet with, I think we're like 2,000 people in that massive amphitheater. And his bet was, he said, next year we're going to have robots helping with the setting of people sitting. So very basic stuff. In 2 years from now, we're going to have robots, in the audience. In 3 years from now, we're going to have robots everywhere. And he said also, I bet that the developed countries will get to a 3-day work week within, I don't know, I think he said 5 years, but the salaries will be kept, or the salaries will be kept the same. And I actually tend to believe, I think we will be forced to work less because there won't be work enough. I mean, soon things would be replaced. I mean, I just built myself a very complex technology platform in a week using vibe coding. I had no idea. I've never coded in my life. I built something very complex using vibe coding, which would have cost $500,000 a year or 2 years ago. And I just did myself. Build a website in 5 minutes using Lovable. And those are just examples that I've just experienced that myself in the past months. But a lot of jobs will disappear. What's going to happen with these people? Some will probably, and there's no way that these people will die of hunger. So I think the social system will need to come with some kind of way to have people working less, but still having the same number of people employed. Because the growth will, if everything goes right and there's no war in Europe or somewhere else, and right, I think we can go into the world of abundance. And again, with the political caveats of the current years. And then I think people will have more time, at least in the developed side of the world. And with more time, people will start spending, or some of the people will start spending this time to help their health. And I think that's going to be very, very beneficial. Because most of I see now in our patients, again, time is the biggest concern. People say, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to come to the clinic 3 times a week. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to eat properly. I don't have time to sleep. But what if we have time? Then it's prioritize.
But do you think that people are going to prioritize filling that time with health? Or will they, like, I know I would start another company. I think that's the fundamental problem with late stage capitalism, is that there's this idea of, I now have time, I should use it to be productive, even though I think you and I both agree that investing in our health is the most productive use of our time. But I think other people think differently, where they want that to be like a monetization of their productivity, which is then creating more of a problem. So I think there's a flip there, and maybe there is a time where those two groups start to diverge, where you have the people working that 3-day week, enjoying their 4-day weekend. This sounds like a dream. Or the people that are doing the 3-day week for one employer, they do another 3-day week for another employer. They have their robot doing another 3 days for them, or however it goes. But so I kind of want to bring that back a little bit to that founder grind. This overwork mentality that we all get very stuck on. If somebody is really stuck in this, they don't think they could break out of that, what is the one thing you would recommend that they focus on when it comes to their health?
Okay, still basics. Nutrition. I think nutrition, if there was one thing to choose, it's difficult to choose one thing, right? Because I think nutrition and movement and sleep are the basics. So funny, if you don't put the right fuel in your body, the body doesn't function. There's no energy. And then there's no energy and everything else comes afterwards. So energy production, ATP production is related to a healthy body, related to a healthy fuel that you put in your body. And we all have access, or at least in the developed side of the world, we all have access to healthy food. Now, do we buy healthy food or we buy processed food is another problem. And I think that then it's movement. We sit all day. I mean, people sit in the office, people sit in front of the TV. It takes some kind of education and some kind of some effort to not to sit, right? I just stand now. I stand in front of my laptop. I have just a standing desk at home. I move continuously, but again, it's just because I know that that's good for me. And even standing is not great. I need to move. Moving is better than standing. But yeah, if I was to say nutrition, movement, sleep, extremely important. And I think too many of us actually underestimate the impact of sleep. I actually, many years, I was telling my mom I will sleep when I'll be dead. And luckily, I was almost dying because I was not sleeping enough. Luckily, I've been trying to correct this. And then, community, obviously. But then there's other things which can add up. And I think those are the essential. You can always tweak afterwards. So it's a bunch of other things, supplementing for nutritional deficits, supplement for other things. Trying different treatments to eliminate inflammation.
If you could place a bet on one emerging technology in like health or longevity that you think is really going to be super massive in 10 years. I liked this example you gave. I mean, the robots might be here already in 3. So even 10, it's a far reach. But what do you think most people are sleeping on, the emergent technology that you think is actually going to be super big?
So very interesting. Even in my friends, no one really talks about it. I think we don't see it coming. I think that's maybe because this is like at the same Mind Valley University. There's a show movie about, and this was 6 months ago. There's 70 companies in China currently producing humanoid robots. That's China, right? In completely dark factories where the robots build robots. There's no light. You don't need light, right? The robots don't need light to build machines.
Of
So I
course.
think we,
Crazy. I didn't even think about
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I think just because we don't see it yet in our reality, we don't believe. It's the same thing like, no one talks about, 30 people in the Western Europe talk about what's happening on the Eastern side, right? But because it doesn't affect us now, but it can affect us tomorrow, it can affect us at any moment in time. So I think we just underestimate. You always underestimate. We overestimate short term, and you underestimate long term, right? But I think we don't realize what's going to come, and I think what's going to come is going to come with such a speed,
Yes.
and we'll realize when it's going to affect us in our day-to-day life, potentially in a positive way, hopefully in a positive way. But I think the biggest change will come from the fact that what we see now on the AI side. It's so early. It started 3 years ago. I still remember. I used GPT in March 2020. What was it? March 2022, I think, or 2023 actually. I don't even remember. It was like in a couple of months after it came out. So we're still in the early stage, and since then it evolves so much. So what's going to happen in 5 years from now? It's difficult to imagine, actually. I think that's where people struggle to realize what's going to be until they see it in front of their houses.
Yeah. And I agree that it's going to come remarkably fast because even with like in the adoption of the automobile, which is, 100 years ago basically now, that was a 5-year span. It was like everyone was using horses, everyone's using cars 5 years. And that happened 100 years ago. We saw with ChatGPT, they had 1 billion users within, I'm going to misquote, but I feel like it was like the first 3 months. And
Yeah.
I wonder if robots will be the thing that's adopted that quickly. Still think there's a human we mentioned community being such an important part of longevity. It's like there's a distance there with the AI. And I see that too as people, and I think I see it with the robots as well. That it's not, the human element is what we yearn for. And so I'm hoping that maybe in that same time span, we actually see a resurgence of going back into physical community. I would love to see this, that people are like, okay, we have too much tech, we have too many robots, everything's happening. Or maybe the robot's taking care of the house now, so now I could go out and I could enjoy my community. I hope that maybe that's the last, maybe that's what will happen. I hope so.
No, 100%. Look, I think the human interaction will become much more important. People will go back to, going to a restaurant, speaking to each other, I think that's and that kind of I strongly believe that the winning also businesses will be these brick and mortar things where people will start to gather again and spend time together. And that's why I strongly believe in the infrastructure model for wellness and longevity, because there's things you cannot do online yet. You still need to do treatments. You still want to meet other people, build a community, speak to other people who do, similar wellness, treatments or longevity treatments that you do.
Yeah, I think there's also part of the process of like physically like going to the space and taking the time, spending your hour and a half at the gym, walking home, whatever it is. That whole experience is very good for your health. And having something that breaks it up instead of just being like Zoom call, Zoom call, Zoom call, Zoom call, even if it is like I'm going to talk with my longevity coach, I'm going to talk with my functional health doctor back to back. I think there is something to be said about just creating the ritual around that brings you into the real world that I hope we see I really do hope we see a resurgence of. But what if somebody was like just getting into the longevity space right now, what sort of advice would you give them that you wish you knew earlier along in your journey building in the space?
People getting into longevity as a business, or people getting into longevity as a
Let's go with the latter one first. So yeah, getting into longevity as an individual.
As an individual, I would even not think about longevity, but about how do I make sure that I can live healthier and I can still I want to be able to leave my daughter when I'll be maybe in 10 years from now, where she's free, she's going to be 13. I still want to have the right energy. To be able to do that, I need to do a number of things. I need my VO2 max to be high. I need to keep muscle mass. I'm 51. I'm losing. I'm training every day. I'm still losing muscle mass. I lost 2.5% of my muscle mass in the past year, despite the fact that I train. So how do I do that? Right? It's about what are the simple interventions that will keep us healthier longer to be able to enjoy our families, our friends. I think this is what I'm talking. I'm not talking about biohacking with people. I'm telling my friends, look, you are whatever, 40, 50, what you want to do. Do you want to be with your family, with your loved ones, with your kids? You want to be healthy. You want to be able to ski with your grandchildren, in 10, 15 years from now, then that's what you need to do to get there. You need to, and it's not complicated, right? It's just, lift heavy stuff, move continuously, eat quality food, sleep, and be happy. Yes, you can always do other stuff afterwards. And, we talk about all the biohacks in the world, right? But there's so much noise now about peptides. And I'm myself on a peptide protocol, but it's a medically driven prescribed protocol. I'm not just taking peptides for the sake of taking peptides. And, a lot of doctors say, yes, great, but make sure that your basics are there. Don't just take something hoping that that thing will replace the basics. If you are 80% and everything else is okay, then you can tweak and you can optimize.
Yeah,
I think
it's always the foundation that has to be solid
foundation.
first. There's no shortcut, basically.
And happiness. I mean, you and I talked in Lisbon a few months ago. It's about happiness, people being happy, and the mind. And we didn't talk too much now about mindfulness, and but this is so important because yes, your body can be healthy, but if your mind is not healthy, then everything comes from here, right? What wakes when you wake up in the morning and you want to go to whatever, you want to go to the gym or something, if your mind says no, I want to stay in bed because I'm depressed, I'm not going to go to gym, right? So mind is so important. Keep your brain. And one thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot is, because there's a big belief now that the body, you'll be able to do a lot of stuff in the next year. Maybe replace. I mean, we talk about organ replacement. We talk about not only artificial organ, but we talk about, being able to grow organs in a lab.
Yeah.
We started with livers, we continue with kidneys. I strongly believe that in 5 to 10 years from now, you'll be able to change body parts. And there are funds investing heavily. I just, Julian Issa, one of our friends, was interviewed, and a venture capital founder founder of a fund in Asia. Just they do that. They just invest in body replacement, organ replacement. So one thing that will not be able to replace is the brain. How do you replace the brain? Very difficult. And if one day you'll be able to replace the brain, but the brain as a physical organ, or the brain as a soul, as a memory, as what's inside, I doubt that's going to come anytime soon. So if we don't keep our brain and what's inside the brain healthy, you can have the healthiest body in the world. It's not going to work, right? So I think brain is another big area, and, talking about, all the brain inflammation diseases, right? All the, Alzheimer's and Parkinson and MS. How do we solve this? And more people get sick. Association between, inflammation and brain inflammation and microplastics and all the chemicals. There's so much we can over and above just the body.
Yeah. And the other question that I asked too is, what advice would you give to somebody trying to build in longevity right now from the company side?
Yeah, I think, and that's why I'm thinking more and more about brain, even in our clinics and the new clinics that we're building, to actually focus them on brain and gut. Because those are the two things which come more and more often. And if I was to try to focus, it would be brain and gut, and everything which is associated to the the inflammation of the brain and gut, and you can go very, very far. I've tried a bunch of treatments for my own brain inflammation. Luckily, I have access to my. So I spent 1.5 months in Bucharest during the summer, and I did neurofeedback, transmagnetic craniotherapeutics, TMS, and it helped me tremendously. IVs with phosphatidylcholine and things which actually rebuilds. I was super inflamed, and I saw it in my blood. I went into a massive burnout, and it helped me. So I think brain is super important, and then prevents the best, and then fix whatever you can fix early. It's better than leave it to degrade and to become irreversible. Now, how do you test diagnostics? Are Alzheimer tests now coming up, which can detect Alzheimer 10, 15 years before it happens? Now, what do you do afterwards? How do you change your lifestyle? Are there treatments today to completely stop the inflammation and disease? Not yet, but there are things that will come in the next years. So I think that's probably.
I agree.
And on the other side,
I
indeed, is the body treatments and replacement. I don't think that period will come anytime soon. Prevention is number one, but for the people who cannot prevent, and it's too late to prevent because the conditions are already there, replace organs, replace body parts.
It's a wild future to consider, being able to
Yeah.
replace all the body parts, but it is, I think, a direction that I know a lot of companies working towards this type of organ replacement therapy, or even just like stem cells and rejuvenation therapies like this as well. And I agree with you 100%. The brain is really the last unknown and the most crucial one. Absolutely. Like, we have this incredible supercomputer that runs on low energy at our disposal all the time, and yet we still, we're not even taking care of it. We'll make a data center that's the size of a state and fill it and burn, just like fossil fuels to fund it, when we have basically that up here in our brains. So one day when we can also start to replicate that, I'm really excited for when those discoveries come out. But Emilian, I am so thankful that we got to share this hour together, and I got to learn more about your clinics, your story, your journey, the healthy advice that we all should be taking. Where can my listeners find you? Where can they find Expand if they want to get in touch?
Sure. Well, on LinkedIn, Emilian Popa, POPA, my clinics, Expand Health, so Expand Health Cape Town, Expand Labs Bucharest, our technology platform, Expand Health AI, and on social media, I'm a bit on Instagram, but very much on LinkedIn and active, and trying to post whatever I find interesting and want to share it with the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this
Thank you.
conversation, and I hope I get to see you soon.
Thanks, Ina.
All right. Ciao, ciao.